Thanks for joining on a Thursday night. I know you can be pretty much anywhere else. Soccer with the kids. My daughter had rugby today. Managed to get home before the presentation though. Um, yeah. And then Marco, you've been on a plane most of your day today.
Yeah, yeah. Most of the days, I didn't even get off the plane already, and we had a Zoom call with some people. Then it's been a couple meetings ever since, but
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll probably go by the cocktail bar and get myself a nice Negroni and enjoy my evening after this.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Right.
All
I
right.
say we
Well,
could get started, and anybody that joins will get the recording.
yeah, sounds like a plan. All right. So let me just share my screen. Yep, we're recording. All right. And share my screen. Go. Let me know if you guys can see me and see my screen there. See me in the corner. Haven't seen that done on Zoom yet. Pretty neat.
Technology.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining once again. We've got an exciting topic. Marco, what are we going to be discussing today?
Yes, today we are going to be talking about the modular advantage. So for us at Biosis Development, our focus is on creating value by enhancing speed, ensuring certainty, and maximizing efficiency in every project that we undertake. Approach not only builds better returns, but also aligns with our commitment to improving lifestyle and the lives of our community. What sets us apart is our dedication to modular construction model. This means we can deliver projects faster with greater precision, and which translates to increased investor confidence and satisfaction, which means that our vision is not just to build structures, but the best possible model of life for our community. So
Beautifully
for
said.
those of you who are new here, welcome, and thank you for joining us as we explore how our innovative methods lead to superior real estate development. Now, a quick note before we start. Everything you see tonight is information only. It's not an offer, and the projected returns and projections you see are not guaranteed. Real estate development is speculative, and you should always consider that you could be losing your investment and the risk involved. And before making any investment decision, please consult with your own lawyers, accountant, financial advisor, as we are not here to replace them.
Yeah, it's so important. What we're going to be talking about today is based on our best guess and our projections. Ultimately, everybody needs to be doing their own due diligence and consulting with their professionals. So, what's on the agenda today, Marco?
A lot of fun stuff. So on the agenda today, we're going to be looking at the economics behind real estate development in Ontario as they are changing. We'll look at a unique approach. We'll look at the big picture, the modular advantage, the fundamentals, and how they still matter to this day, our business plan with Biosis, and we'll dive in a little bit into some of the numbers and how you can get involved
That's
furthermore.
right. We're going to be using a project that we are just kicking off in the Ottawa area as kind of a case study for this modular approach, but it really does form part of a larger business plan that we're trying to enact.
Yes. So Biosis, we have an incredible team. First, we have our leader, Samuel Herschorn, our Principal Director of Development and Operations. Samuel is a licensed architect with over 14 years of experience. I swear it's like the amount of hours he's worked, it's like 30 years now. And he has successfully delivered projects worth over $50 million across his experience. His architect leadership ensures that our projects are designed and delivered by the same hands, providing consistency and integrity from start to finish. Next, we have Andrew, our investor relation manager. Andrew is dedicated to he's dedicated to building a relationship with all of our investors through communication and great leadership. His role is crucial in ensuring that investors stay informed and engaged at every stage of the investment journey. Then there's me, Marco, Director of Capital Raising, and I bring a multifaceted background as a real estate investor, a land development, a live developer, an accountant, and a business coach. I have a pretty diverse expertise, and I would say that it's pretty pivotal in securing the capital that we need, and as well as putting together the vision. And
Pretty
finally, we
important
have
piece there. Yeah.
right. And finally, we have Dakota Scott, our principal director of design and project management. Dakota is an MAATO certified with 14 years plus of architectural design. Dakota is probably one of the coolest person you'll ever meet. So if you guys ever have a chance, we
And
will
he's
do something together, guys. He is a
and he's
really,
a
really
brilliant designer. He's really got an artistic
brilliant.
touch and an eye for it. Uh,
Absolutely.
and these are some of the projects we've worked on together. Yeah. So it's a mix of residential. We've done industrial, commercial, long-term care, and retirement. One of the biggest projects I'm currently working on for another client is based out of Kitchener. It's a 144 unit retirement home, that one on the right there. So what's the advantage? You know, I'm an architect, Dakota's an architect, and we've got you on the capital side. But tell us, you know, why did we stack our services this way, Marco?
Everything in-house. I think that one of the biggest value that we have is the fact that we're able to come together to avoid any lack of communication between any professionals and people in the business. We use advanced due diligence. We have a greater underwriting accuracy and, of course, expert delivery. So when you are part of this deal, when you are part of this family, you're part of a team that can do it all and not just outsourcing to try to penny pinch.
Yeah, I mean, I spent so many hours trying to convince clients to do things the right way, and it takes pain on their part before they recognize it. You know, the projects suffer and the investors suffer. It came to a
Yeah.
point where I just said, why don't we take over the development side, manage the projects the way we want to see them managed, cut out the middleman, and really streamline the approval process. So that's kind of what led to the merging of Biosis Development and Biosis Designs. So now that we've kind of done the introductions, let's dive into things. We're going to talk about the big picture and the current market and housing economy in Canada in general, and then more specifically in Ontario. So it's no secret. If you turn on the news, all you hear about, it's a recession, it's a recession, it's a technical recession. And these are the graphs that are causing that stir. They're taken directly from Stats Canada. And you can see here, month of April, May, we've had two consecutive months where GDP as a percentage of population has actually dropped and receded. That's what's spurring, you know, this discussion and, you know, how the economy is doing. But we want to dive a little bit deeper. We want to understand why we have why we have this technical recession. And we attribute it to three primary causes. The first, declining population. We all know and we all witnessed how crazy the immigration policy was between, you know, 2019 to 2024. You know, at one point, we were letting in 1.5 million people per year into the country. And it's just not sustainable. Our infrastructure couldn't keep up. Our, you know, all of our services, our hospitals were overburdened. So when the Carney government came in, they slammed the door shut. And when you do that, you know, we don't have the fertility rates to keep up with population growth. So we actually see a decline. And as you see that population decline, so does the GDP. It's just cause and effect. And Carney recently acknowledged that fact. The next reason, spiking energy costs. The other thing you can't get away from in the news. There's a war going on in the Middle East, and the Strait of Hormuz is closed. So 20% of the world's oil supply is just not getting to market, or at least not getting to the market fast enough to keep up with demand. So costs have gone up, energy has gone up, trade is going down as a result, and that's causing stress on Canada because a lot of our trading partners are cutting back, and this kind of ties into the last piece here, which is that trade dispute going on with our friends down south. And, you know, it's kind of the elephant in the room. Now we're seeing CUSMA negotiations starting back up again. And of course, Donald Trump stomping his fists and raising his hands at Canada. So with that covered, we now have the scene in the broader Canadian market. How does the housing market tie into that? Well, The real estate market in Canada actually composes of over 20% of our nation's GDP. And the other piece that I didn't mention in that first preamble is we're in a major housing correction. All right. We overbuilt on condos. Pricing, we had a run up of inflation after the pandemic. People were scrambling to buy housing. And then when interest rates went up and shot up very quickly, all of a sudden people couldn't close on those condos. People, couldn't afford the house they had just bought. And so we had a kind of not quite a sell-off, but a shift. It went from high demand and low supply to decent supply and much lower demand. But then when you pack on top the fact that they shut the doors on immigration, now the demand is basically gone, right? People aren't coming into the country to absorb that. So the supply that we have today is getting absorbed slowly, and rents are coming down, housing prices are coming down as a result. And that's probably a good thing. It was much needed. But when you look at it from an economic standpoint, that's over 150 billion that is contributed to the national GDP that is no longer revving up to meet those markers. The other thing is that because the economics no longer make much sense, a lot of the developers who had projects in their pipeline have either put that on hold or canceled it outright. And most of those developers who are overbuilding on the condos are left holding the bag on unsold condos. So what does this actually look like? Well, this graph was taken from CMHC portal. We know in Ontario that we had to hit a certain number of homes being built. But because of that sudden decline in construction starts, we can see this is where it was intended to reach. We were supposed to be building almost 180,000 new homes per year to keep up with demand and future projections. Where we're actually at is well below 70,000. So it's less than half of what we need to be building is actually getting started here in Ontario. And that has huge ramifications for our economy. So the big question that every investor asks, what's the future hold? Well, I'm going to look in my little crystal ball here. It's just in my head, so these are mainly my opinions. But we can actually draw from a lot of what other economists are saying and what the Stats Canada is publishing on actual numbers. So we know for a fact that the month of May, even though we were in a technical recession, we actually added 90,000 new jobs, which is fantastic to hear. Data is always lagging. So when they calculate those recession values, it's based on previous months and data that's slowly trickling in. Same with the jobs numbers, but this is a little faster to update because the CRA and other data collection points are coming into play. So we're seeing an uptick in jobs, which is great to see. We also know that the immigration policies are going to be changing, and they're already changing. So if you look here on the right-hand side, we've got the federal government's published policies on how many people they expect to let back in the country. In 2026, they're looking at temporary residents will be around 385,000. And then they're also going to be letting in another 380,000 in permanent residences. That's over 700,000 people back in the country per year. And it's the same for 2027 and 2028. It's a little lower on the temporary residence side, but consistent on the permanent residence side. So before that, they shut the doors. I think the most they let in was about 150,000 people. So we're going from 150,000 people in the country per year to over 700,000 people, and they're going to need a place to stay. Next, CUSMA negotiations are moving forward. We know that the deal, it's not being rewritten. Okay, it's just up for review, and Donald Trump could pull out of it, but the impact on his campaign for the November elections would probably be devastating. So my prediction, we will actually reach a deal before the midterms. He is very motivated to get a win on that column. What that deal looks like, I don't know. But I see that as being the first domino in effect that will lead to the turnaround in the economy because investors like certainty and stability. And with a new deal in place, that brings that certainty and stability. Suddenly, all those trade disputes and tariffs go away. And now investors can confidently come into our country knowing what that relationship is with the US and how goods can go flow across the border. And then lastly, the other big question mark is the end to the conflict in the Middle East and the inflationary effect it has on the world right now. Again, there's that November deadline for the midterms. And I think Donald Trump is very motivated to bring a win before that campaign wraps up. So I would predict that we see an end to that war. Now it's not always up to him, not all up to him, right? Iran has to agree, and there are a lot of other states involved in that conflict. So that might be a point where it's out of his hands, and he might not get that one. So either way, I think the higher energy prices are here to stay for at least the near term, minimum 6 months. I would probably put that closer to a year. And then the last piece that we really want to drill down into as real estate investors and as developers is the Canadian construction crisis. So that falling construction start that I mentioned, we understand the overall levels, people aren't building. What is underlying that? What is the underlying cause? And while I had it there on the last slide, it was a positive note. On this slide, it's very different. Like the problems that we're seeing in the industry are structural. They are fundamental issues, and we are seeing them start slowly to change. So things like approval timelines, development charge, and taxes, the federal, provincial, and municipal governments are working to bring those down, but we still see very long delays in getting things approved. It's a nightmare. Like most projects to get through site plan approval take a minimum of 10 to 12 months. I've been on projects that it's been 3 to 4 years, and that's before you even have permits involved. The next issue is material price volatility. So that does tie into that trade aspect and the price of oil. But material costs are based on inflation as well, and they've been going up steadily. You can see by the top right-hand corner, these are the construction price indices, and Ontario's has been rising quite steadily and sharply since 2019. That is kind of like the underlying, like the hand that's pushing pricing up on real estate from below that people aren't talking about enough. The other thing that's pushing construction prices up is the fact that we have a huge labor shortage. Skilled trades, plumbers, electricians, woodworkers, framers. We were relying on a very old traditional sect of the labor force to develop and build a lot of housing for us. They are slowly starting to retire. And, based on the Stats Canada numbers, and on some of the other economists that we follow, they think that Ontario needs to recruit over 100,000 new skilled trades and workers in construction industry just to maintain current levels of demand and keep up with current demand, not to even accommodate for future growth. That's a huge number of people who need to get into the trades. And the last piece here that is really quite detrimental to industry are rampant delays in construction timelines, cost inflation, and these delays span because of weather, trade issues, scarcity of labor, mistakes that happen through design and in construction, and poor planning principles. So all of these have had a compounding effect that's really been pushing our price for housing up through the roof. And that led us to conclude we just need a different approach to development. Like we can't keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and hope for different results. So our new approach, not really new, but maybe a different approach than what's been conventionally done, is to lean into modular construction. But before we get into the business plan, let's talk a bit about what modular really means. So in our industry, there's generally 3 different types of modular construction. We have a component-based system. So that's where you are building full fitted out of components of a building. And you can see an example down here. So this is a exterior wall, but it's got the framing, insulation, vapor barrier, drywall, and your windows and doors already installed. So that gets craned into place. And it's kind of like it's not it's kind of like getting your Lego pre-assembled out of the box, but you then click it together, all right? So then you have your flat pack panels. Say that 10 times fast. So this is where it's mainly framing. So you've got your studs, your sheathing, header plates, bottom sill plates that are all assembled in a factory. Your floors, as well as your floor decking, would also be assembled in a factory, and potentially your roof framing. But it's really just the framing components. They are shipped on a truck, and you can see this is actually taken from one of our job sites. And you can see these full panels that are literally just craned into place, and you got two guys that line it up, and they put their nail guns and they fasten it into place. Those are great. They're really well suited to sites that are oddly shaped, sites that maybe have some logistical constraints, but are still relatively open. You can still have staging. As you can see here, a lot of material is still kept on the site while they work. What you'll see with those methods is you'll see about 17% time savings on your projects. Costs is, again, relatively the same. You might get some economies of scale through the material of the framing material, but generally you can cut down on labor as well because you only need two guys and a lift truck on site. So they're great systems, but there's one step further that we decided we want to go, and this is fully volumetric. When we say volumetric construction, we're talking about the entire unit. So an entire 1 or 2 bedroom or studio unit that is built in a factory with all the finishings, all your cabinetry, your sinks, your plumbing, your electrical already roughed in, all your doors, your windows, your countertops already installed. And that gets loaded onto a flatbed truck and shipped to site. And then the crane, as you can see, brings it in and connects them. You're basically stacking blocks. And the reason we're so interested in this is the huge benefit to the time saved on site and the logistics around it, which is what I'm going to cover next. Oh, whoops, that's loud. So I'm going to see if I can pause that. All right, I'll just hold this down while we talk. All right, so how does the modular system work? So we, as the architects and all the consultant team, we will design the building according to the modular specifications of the manufacturer. That is a collaborative process. We do it using a 3D software, and we work with the manufacturer from day one to design the building and all of the components that go into it. And you can see it on the far left-hand side, step number 1, fully design, inspect. And they have some proprietary software that they use for clash detection and but more specifically, to itemize every single component of the building. Once it's been modeled in 3 dimensions, all of the components get sent out for ordering. The material is pre-ordered. It's brought to the factory and put into production. And this production works like a manufacturing line, like you're assembling a fridge on a production line. It's highly efficient. Your trades are pre-booked, and there is a system to it. And that's where this video comes into play. So you can see here, this is a modular unit that is moving from one station to the next along tracks. They've already done all the framing. They've installed some of the insulation. You can see the interior drywall done and the exterior sheathing. And now they're moving over to the next station and bringing up the module behind it for that installation process. Once the module is built, it's part of a larger system. But first they have to wrap it, and it's typically stored on a storage yard until the foundations and all the site work is done on site. Once that site work is in, they will ship it to the site. And again, you have a much larger crane truck, but still a crane truck and a couple guys guiding these modules into place. They will lay it down on the foundation, usually a crawl space underneath, so that they can connect the plumbing and utilities. And then they will fill in the seams, making sure that these modules are airtight, all the structures aligning, the walls are lining up with the other modules below. And these modules, they get installed very quickly. Um, Once they're installed, you have your final finishing, you have your punch list, your review, and your final testing and commissioning of all your services. And then inspector signs off and you're good to start occupying. So it's a very efficient process, and this is what your timeline looks like. So on the top, you've got your traditional build times, and then on the bottom, you've got your modular. So designing and permits, they're going to be identical. Site prep and foundations are going to be identical, but at the start of site prep and foundation, you can start building the vertical portion of the building in the factory. So you are stacking these processes. Your module assembly is also very quick, very quick to install. So while the site prep and foundations will be the same regardless, your framing, envelope, all the interior finishings takes a lot longer on site than it does in the factory. So you are saving up to 50% time on a project. And that just adds to your bottom line in terms of your profit. You're faster to be able to do an equity pullout. You're faster, or a refi. You're faster to cash flowing and actually, seeing that building come to life. So there are some other major advantages to modular. It operates on a fixed price model. So when the manufacturer gives you the proposal and the cost to build, that's the cost it's going to be. It doesn't fluctuate very much. Now, there are some instances where you might encounter a pipe when you do your excavation that needs to be moved. There are some small change orders that come into effect. There are also issues if you don't properly plan the modular process. You don't have your foundations properly set according to the drawings. That can cause issues. But generally speaking, you're going to see fewer change orders. You're going to see a better logistics. You won't be exposed to trades not showing up the site, weather delays causing a cacophony of effects. You won't see as many disputes between subtrades and the general contractor. Ultimately, your construction loan is reduced, so that's fewer carrying costs, less interest that you're accruing, and the quality of these buildings is a lot higher. I'm going to get into that next. So when we're talking quality, when you're building rental apartments, there are a few things that come to mind. Your tenants want comfort. They want to be comfortable. They want to have their own space, privacy. That means quiet buildings, and then quality of the actual materials. You don't want things breaking down on you. That you don't want structure shifting and causing issues inside the building. Well, the way these modules are built, it naturally creates a double wall, double floor system, very soundproof. Like it's probably one of the highest sound ratings that you can get in wood frame construction without pouring a concrete topping. The other thing is because they're all wrapped in vapor barrier, essentially coming out of the storage yard, they're very airtight. They come pre-assembled with insulation as well, higher R value, so they're very, very thermally comfortable. That means you have to pair it with a good ventilation system, but they are top quality. Your energy costs are going to be much lower on this type of building than it will on a conventional building. And then structurally, you can also see how sturdy these things are built, right? This is a very thick engineered joist. I believe you've got an LVL with some I joists in between. They're very sturdy, and they need to be because you're stacking multiple on top of each other. But it means it's quite a rigid structure that's going to last. So modular, it's a great system, but there are still things you got to watch out for. I'm going to pass this one off to Marco because he's very familiar with some of the mistakes that investors and developers still need to take into account.
Right, absolutely. Now, we see while modular construction offers many benefits, it's important to recognize that it isn't a one size fits all solution. All of your underwriting market like right now. So fundamentals are essential or are the fundamentals are essential and is a start of choosing the right deal. Market analysis such as location, your population, economic growth, public transportation, and medium income still come into play. There's still things such as managing your approval risk, which is a vital step when dealing with modular approval. Often takes a little bit longer than anticipated or can take longer than anticipated. So you always have to plan for a long term. And you have to consider factors for highest, especially when you're considering factors like highest and best use, public support, environmental condition, and such as your soil and groundwater. Now, keep in mind, many financial institutions as well are unfamiliar with financing modular projects, so making conservative underwriting, uh, conservative underwriting is very, very necessary.
And working
Now,
with a lender that understands that it's not conventional construction, right?
right.
You're not doing your traditional construction draws after it's built because it's getting built first. It's getting built before it even gets to site. So working with a lender that understands this is critical.
Exactly, exactly. And for that, you also have to plan for a long-term exit and the conditions of your exit. Multiple exit across the line is also very crucial when doing underwriting so that you can anticipate what is the best potential return on your investment for yourself and your investors. Now, leading that is why we are also so lenient and so bullish on Ottawa. Ottawa is the number one.
Yeah, it's a good segue into our market and why we chose this particular location.
Right. Ottawa is number one in Canada in terms of quality of life, number one in America in terms of quality of life. It's number 28 globally. It's a diversified economy. It's a very strong economy where a huge portion of the employment the people employed in Ottawa are a certain level of government, whether it's federal, provincial, or even city-based. Huge tech sector, huge healthcare, a huge education, a lot of post-secondary education here in Ottawa. I think one of our universities, University of Ottawa, sees almost 100,000 students a year, which is incredible amount of people, which also goes back to our numbers is we have to find sustainable development that could help these numbers so that it's affordable for people to be here.
Hmm.
Ottawa has over 1 million people and is expected to grow even furthermore. And we see just endless amount of new residents come in per year. So in terms of sustainability, Ottawa is the market that we've chosen and we continue to be bullish on.
Yeah, and the rental rates are still quite strong, even though
Yeah.
they've built a lot of apartments where Toronto was building condos. Ottawa was doing some condo, but also a lot of rentals. They're still those developers are still pulling back. They haven't seen the big steep drop that Toronto has. Rental rates are still quite elevated. 2,500 for a two-bedroom, 1,900 for a one bed. And even though we've seen, vacancy rates go up throughout the country, Ottawa's has still stayed pretty manageable. Like 3% vacancy is what, they were at 1% at one point,
Yeah.
less than 1%, right? 3% is healthy. That's where any city should be targeting, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and look at
And
that.
more specifically, when we're talking about the Mandevilla project,
Mhm.
we want to find sustainable location, somewhere where it makes sense. So our Mandevilla project sits on Saint Laurent Boulevard, which is the intersect between what the suburban market will be and as well as the downtown core. So if you're very familiar with Ottawa, everybody knows that Saint Laurent Boulevard road, and it's very popular for that particular reason. Now, if you see some of the most intriguing portion about this place is that it's close to hospitals, schools, all of the entertainment that you can get, very close to downtown, very close to all the education hubs, and as well as entertainment hubs. It's literally right across from a public school.
Hmm.
Can't get better than that in terms of tenant selection,
Yeah,
right?
and less than a kilometer to the Ottawa General Hospital, to
Yeah.
CHEO, the Children's Hospital. Yeah, the St. Laurent Shopping Center. You've got the Via Rail train station, like less than a kilometer away. Like this is the Ottawa East End, but it's a happening place with tons of industry as well as residential and educational spots. So literally, like without being right downtown, this is a fantastic spot, especially to build rental apartments because this spot is lacking. They don't have
Yeah.
as many rental apartments as you do in the South End or West End of Ottawa.
Absolutely, which fits exactly what we're looking for when we're dealing with our tenants. We want people that can be here not forever, but that can give us the type of
High
tenant rotation that
quality
we
tenant
need, high quality
profile. Yeah.
tenant that are looking for that fits the needs of this project. Employed, they're close to retail spots, the health sectors, great transportation. So this is really why we're bullish in Ottawa, but not just Ottawa, this particular sector of San Juan Boulevard.
Yeah, and it's fundamental, right? Know your customer, know your tenant base. You can build the nicest building, but if it's in the middle of nowhere or the hood, you're not going to get the high quality tenant profile that you want, or that's going to make the business work, right?
Yeah, an example of that is another place in Ottawa called Vanier,
Mm.
where there's a lot of gentrification going on over there, but it's not as fast or as great as everybody's anticipating because it still has a negative connotation to that area currently.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about the Biosis business plan. Now, obviously, we look to buy low and build value and then operate. But, for this project in particular, we're going a little step further. So why don't you tell us about the property, Marco? Tell us a bit about it and what makes this special.
What makes it special other than its unique profile? It's the size of the land, the location, the size of the land. It's nearly 20,000 square foot on Selma Boulevard, which is probably the largest lot outside of these bigger buildings down the street. Therefore, you are in a beautiful near suburban feel, but close enough to the downtown core. This building itself has a lot of, I would like to say, attitude, a little je ne sais quoi. But it also, right now, when we bought it, it's currently tenanted, so the building is able to sustain itself. All these little things that make it worthwhile for us to hold on and see how long can we, yeah, how can we sustainably build towards what we want.
Yeah.
And so currently it's a 3 unit, bought it for $1.1 million, and currently anticipated value of around 2.1 million once we've completed once these new
Without putting
zoning
a
is
shovel in
fully
the ground,
implemented.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, a
with
new
no,
Ottawa zoning bylaw just came into effect. It's currently under appeal, but we expect that to get lifted towards the end of the year. And as soon as it does, a six-story apartment building is built, can be built as of right.
yeah,
That's
a
a
huge increase in value without having to do anything, which is what that goes right back into investors' pockets.
Exactly. Well, this is how you create value, right? You're finding an underserved gem in the rough, and you kind of coax out, what can you do with it? And that was part of our strategy. And the advantage of having your architects on your team is that we created this design based on the site alone, going through the zoning bylaw, the new zoning bylaw, and figuring out what can be built. So, whereas right now you've got your triplex, well, this is what we're going to be building. It's a six-story, 64-unit apartment building. The project value on completion will be 25 million. So going from 1.1 million to 25 million, quite a lift. Total anticipated project costs is going to be around 20 million. So there's just 5 mil. There's potentially $5 million in equity at the end of that. Now, this is going to be composed of a number of studios, one beds and dens, and two-bedroom with a couple of three-bedroom units. We've got 18 surface parking spaces, no underground. Underground tends to kill the pro forma. It's very expensive to build, and you're at break even at best when you're renting underground parking. And for a project of this size, surface parking makes sense. City of Ottawa has removed minimum parking requirements. They've actually set maximum parking requirements, and we've gone back and forth with them. They've forced us to bring the parking lot in a little bit. We originally had an extra 4 spots on either side, and but 18 spots, it's actually pretty decent for a rental community. We're going to be introducing rideshare programs. We will have EV charging to make the numbers work there. Inside the building, we've got 45 storage lockers and 44 bike parking spaces. Fits in really well with what the city's looking for. They like that bicycle pedestrian oriented design. And in terms of the modular, you can see it kind of illustrated in 3D. On the last slide, you can see all the units are lining up. All of the walls are in line. Even the elevators are kind of within this framework, which is about a 14-foot wide module. And then you can see how it's coming together to form the building. So we've got these. So you've got a living space here that's stacked back to back with the corridor. And then right next to it, we'll have our bedroom, bathroom, closet combination. So those are 2 modules right there that get paired. And then you've got a studio module, which is basically taking the living module and just reorganizing it to add a Murphy bed system. And then on the corners, this is where you got your 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom unit configurations. So let's jump into the numbers. What does this actually look like from a pro forma standpoint? Comparing the 2 identical buildings, identical specifications, identical inputs and costs. The only difference is the time savings using modular construction, and you can see the results. So on conventional, our total project cost is actually higher. This is because it takes longer, more carrying costs, more interest costs. More time, more contingency you have to carry throughout the project. The anticipated sale price is the same. We're at 34 months to occupancy with a 48-month hold. Net operating income will be the same. Expense as a percentage of income is the same. Cash on cash is a little lower. Yield on cost is a little lower. Still a very decent overall return, annual rate of return. But the big thing is the return of capital, July 2029. Well, now compared to modular, we're about $500,000 less expensive to build in general. Sale price, same, but this time we're at 26 months to occupancy with the same hold period. Net operating income is the same. Cash on cash a little higher, yield on cost a little higher. Total project return, annual return at 32%. That's 7% higher than a conventional build. So where's the money coming from? What's it being used for? So the way we are breaking this project down, we will be using CMHC debt to finance the build at about 17 million. That represents less than 85% loan to cost, 83%. We are raising 3.4 million to fund the deposit structure, the entitlements, and pay all of our development fees and taxes. And then we've put in about 300,000 ourselves to secure the land and get this project moving. So that's broken down a bit further here in this on the left-hand side or the right-hand side here. So Marco, if someone's interested in our project and wants to get involved, how do they do that?
All right, so there's 2 tiers of investment opportunity for somebody that wants to come in. So we're having Class A shares and Class B shares. So our first round is our seed round of Class A shares, which would be around $600,000. We do accept RRSPs and tax-free savings accounts as part of your investment. And as well as we offer for anybody within our Class A shares seed round, we do offer a preferred return, which is an additional 10% annual return. Now, the equity multiplier, if we look at what that numbers really mean, is that if you bring in $100,000, your equity multiplier by the end of the project will be 290,000, so 2.9 times your initial capital. Your return on capital will be for Class A year 3 plus a 10% bonus, and for Class B it will be in year 2. Time in project will be 6 years in total if you're an early Class A investor, and the second round of Class B investor will be 5 years in total. internal rate of return, 29.2% for the Class A, and Class B around 25.1, and as which yields a net profit per 50K. So 92,842 for Class A shares if you're looking at bringing in $50,000 versus 73,838 if you're bringing in
So essentially,
$50,000.
what we've done here is we've broken this into two tranches.
Yeah.
We need that first tranche, 600,000, to get the project through approvals. This will fund all of our engineering work, design work, all of those development charges and taxes gets paid into that, as well as the initial deposit for pre-construction with the builder and the manufacturer. The Class B, those are your common units. That's really what we use to get the project into construction. So Class A, you're in for a little bit longer, right? You're in for about an extra year during that approval time frame. That's why we give the extra bonus to make up for the extra time spent in the project. And that's what this slide is kind of depicting here. So our waterfall, so Class A has that preferred return. Once the project is built, we've got it leased up, we'll be doing an equity pullout. Class A gets their money back plus their 10% return paid out. Then Class B gets their money back. And then Class M, which is us, the managers, we get whatever we've put in back. And then at that point, everyone's made whole. Class A's got their little bonus. We're all participating in the project. 70% of profits goes to the investors, 30% retained by our team as our sponsor promote. So in terms of a timeline, so this is it's maybe a little hard to see on the screen, but essentially we've got 10 months that we're planning, get through site plan approval into permits and into construction. Construction and lease up, we've merged those together. So to build it will probably be about 12 to 14 months. Then we've allocated about 8 to 10 months to fill the building with our tenants. And then we're anticipating a refinance or an equity pullout on November 2028. That's where everybody gets made whole. And then a 60-month hold for rent distributions before we finally sell. And with development and these kind of projects, there are a lot of ways that we can exit. We've listed some options here. Essentially, it is like a projection, but we are constantly nurturing those relationships to anticipate that end sale and get everyone their money back. Worst case scenario, we can always refinance the project, pay everyone out, and continue to hold the property because it is a Class A property. 5 years in, it's still going to be in great shape. In fact, a lot of the warranties would still be in place. So Marco, to wrap things up, tell us, what are your final thoughts on this as a project?
So as a project for myself, it is the future of what Ottawa's development is going to lead towards. It is effective. It helps in our economy and our community and has a huge economic impact, right? It also raises the standard in terms of what development is supposed to be. What we're supposed to be is to provide quick, efficient units to our community so that people have places to live. And that itself raises the standard in terms of who we're working with, the team that's working on it together. And it creates also a long-term legacy for investors in terms of what they are investing themselves, what they're putting their money into. Now, for anybody that has any further questions or anything that they want to ask or any even comments that they want to put, we are always available in terms they could access our data room or even book a call with us individually. We also have a website. You guys could take a further look into what we have and what we're offering. But this is who we are. We are working towards building the future of Ottawa, and we're looking forward to not only work with you, but guide you and help you understand what that future looks like.
Great. So now let's open it up. That's a lot of information to take in. I'm sure there are lots of questions. Of course, this webinar is recorded. You guys will all get the recordings. Yeah, in the meantime, let's fire some out. I see a few in the Q&A. So the first question, how are you calculating the land lift? So I'm guessing you mean lift in terms of each of the values and along every stage. So we have a very detailed pro forma model that we've developed over the last 5 years using not just our projects, but projects that we've done with other developer clients to refine this model. That's our crystal ball. That's how we do our projections. And the way it works is we start by doing a deep dive. We do a market analysis, a market study, a study of the site, pulling all the comps from in the area, the cap rates. We talk to realtors, we talk to other industry experts to help feed into that. And then we're taking construction costs and values from Altus and Yardi, for as a general rough order magnitude, but then we're also drawing from our own projects that we've designed and built and similar projects and the cost basis there. So you plug all that into our pro forma and it gets us a projection of what the future value would be. As we go through each phase of the development, we get appraisals done. We start, the market changes. We update our comps. We find better comps. We see how other developers are building. It's always getting refined as we get actual quotes from contractors and manufacturers. That gets plugged into our pro forma. So we're constantly updating that. It's a moving target, and even by the time the building is built, we're still trying to project into the future on performance. That's how good operators operate. So the land lift, those values that we gave are our current projections, how we see things going. It could change as the project progresses and the economy changes. If you're interested, book a call with me. I'll take you through the numbers in detail and show you exactly how we came to them. All right. Another question here. How does modular affect lender requirements? So this I kind of touched on. Once upon a time, not too long ago, most lenders wouldn't touch modular. They were very comfortable with conventional construction. And the way a construction draw works, contractor goes to site, contractor orders the material, contractor builds and gets the site work's done, gets the foundations in place, then he sends an invoice to the client. The architect goes on site, or the lender's quantity surveyor goes on site, checks off, yes, been done, been done, been done. Okay, here's the check. There you go. Construction paid for. Doesn't work like that on modular. On modular, you have to put a significant amount of money down up front for the manufacturer to order the materials, get the long lead time items into production, and start planning out the project. They do it in bulk. Like they have to get everything at a bulk price for their numbers to make sense, but also to meet the now compressed construction schedule. And lenders used to see that and say, "Oh, this doesn't fit nicely into our box, so we're not going to lend on this." And that's why modular hasn't been very prominent in Canadian construction. It's very prominent in Europe and Japan, a lot of places around the world, just not in North America, mainly because of that one constraint. But since the Carney government started a new fund and CMHC started a new program designed specifically for modular, now all of a sudden we've got 10, 15 different lenders who have gone through and changed all their requirements to permit this. So that's why you're seeing a big wave of people moving into this sector, manufacturers as well as developers. And because the lenders have changed their mindset around it. Now they will still fund like 85% of your deposit. And you have to come up with that first tranche, and then they'll fund the rest, very similar to what they used to do, but they do it ahead of the build. And as these things are built and stored on site, they might send one of their quantity surveyors on site. But usually what they do is they just say, get proper insurance, make sure your manufacturer is fully bonded, which is a kind of another type of insurance, and make sure your transportation guys aren't going to run off the road and cause mayhem. So now that they've got the insurance in place to kind of backstop any potential issues, we're seeing these projects really become more mainstream. Okay, next question. What happens if construction costs increase? That's always a risk. Supply chains and global economics cause price fluctuations all the time. We work hand in hand with the manufacturer and our general contractor to source the right products, source them at the right price that meet our requirements. And if something suddenly is no longer available, we've got a long list of suppliers that we can call up to get replacement at short notice. Ultimately, in development, you have to have a balance of great upfront planning, but then have contingencies and then have the skill and creativity to adapt as things pop up. It really is like solving a Rubik's Cube. Every project is a problem, and you just got to click it in the right ways, and then eventually you'll get to a successful result. Okay. Are there known issues with site utilities, geotechnical, environmental contamination? On our property, we don't have any significant issues. We do need to run a geotechnical analysis of the soil for bearing capacity, but based on the surrounding areas, we don't see any significant issues with that. Of course, we won't know 100% until that is done, and that's part of the first tranche of capital that we're raising is to fund that investigation. Environmental contamination, the phase one came out negative. It's unlikely that we'll need a phase two. The city will advise on that. Services are right outside the building. We'll just be tapping into existing services and utilities. So it seems to be pretty straightforward at this stage. It's not a guarantee until we get into the ground, but I'm pretty confident that there's minimal exposure on that front. You showed the land value increasing from approximately 1.1 to 2 mil. Has the value been independently appraised? Yes. Yeah, we got an appraisal on the future value based on just the zoning bylaw increase, and that was done with the appraisal when we bought the property. Are there additional transportation costs or risks? Yes. So there is a transportation factor here. And the further you have to ship, obviously, the higher the transportation costs. Now, the modules that we've designed are designed specifically to fit on the back of a traditional transport trailer and ship along any major highway with no need for an oversized load and for an escort. You can go so that the dimensions there, I think the max is 16 feet wide from end to end, and about between 80 to I think it can get up to like 100 feet in depth on the flatbed truck. You can go wider. Sometimes there are constraints at the facility to be able to build wider. You can do a wide load, but then you'll need additional permits. You will need a motorcade, all the flags. You've probably seen them as you've driven along the highway. It does add cost, but sometimes the added transport cost gets made up because the larger unit doesn't need to be split into two modules. So that comes down to working very closely with your manufacturer, your architect who's leading that design process, figuring out what's the most effective route and way to do that. Okay. That I think wraps up the questions in the Q&A. I'll open it up. If there's anyone who's got any more questions, just feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself. And yeah, we're here.